Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode today of Moving Through and Beyond. I am very honored and excited that as a speaker, I get to go to some really cool events. And I went to an event a few months ago here in Scottsdale and heard this woman speak, and she absolutely blew me away. And she does not know me at all. But with one ask, she said, absolutely. So, Kate, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to be here with me.
Oh, Carey, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to be here with you. I can't wait.
I can't wait to hear more of your story. But I want to share a little bit about your bio. Kate is one of the most influential speakers on business and personal mastery in Australia. After overcoming a meth addiction and living on the streets in her early 20s, she went on to use the tenacity and grit to become a serial entrepreneur. Over the past 15 years, she has scaled a six-figure brick and mortar business and a seven-figure retreat and coaching business. And in 2021, she was named by Yahoo Finance as one of the top 10 CEOs to watch alongside Grant Cardone and Tia Lopez. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
I think it's tough. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. She has really worked alongside some amazing people, you all, including my mentor, Sharon Lechter. And I am just honored that you would take the time to be here, Kate, and to share your story. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And hello to everyone listening. I'm so excited to be able to share today.
This is quite a story that you've shared, Kate, and the reason that I have people like you come on here is that they all are like you. They've achieved huge success in life, the way that we define success, right? All the accolades, financial freedom, choices of being able to live where we want to live. But there's always a backstory to people. And I think that it's so important, especially in this day and age, especially for our young adults. That's where my heart lies. Because I've lost a 25-year-old son to suicide. I am very, very focused on making sure that the young adults know that they can get through anything and succeed. And so I appreciate you coming on and being just so transparent with your story and kind of sharing where you started. So I'd love to hear that.
Yay. Okay. Well, my story, it kind of sounds like a Hollywood movie. When people say to me, like, that sounds like a movie. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I guess it kind of does. And I kind of downplay it a little bit based on the fact that it feels like such a long time ago. But I'll rewind all the way back to where I was born, and I'll just take you guys through the key moments. I was born in a place called Tasmania, which is a little island at the bottom of Australia where the Tassie Devil from the Warner Brother cartoons is from. And I was born into a very low socioeconomic family. My family are what we call in Australia, they call them bogans. And bogans is kind of a little bit like people that live in trailer parks here. So I come from a very rough upbringing. My family didn't really have a lot. They were very hard workers. But my father did not like me. And when I was growing up, I never understood why he didn't like me, but he was overtly very awful to me and very great to my sister. And that kind of led me growing up feeling like there was something missing, like I wasn't good enough. I never felt like he never once, I think he said he loved me. No, he never said he loved me, actually, not once, not right up until the moment he died. He never said he loved me. So what things like, when I was, now I'm going to get upset. Okay, this is good. When I was growing up, things like he would say to me, if something went wrong in the house, he would say things like, Kate's home, because when Kate's around, everything always goes wrong. Or I'll drop something and he'd be like, you're useless as TITSs on a bull. That's right, you're always doing everything wrong, you're so hopeless. Or I remember I always struggled with my weight as a kid, and I guess that happens when you don't have self-acceptance, you want to nullify yourself, and I would always eat a lot of chocolate and candy and food to try and make myself feel better, and I was always trying to lose weight. And I remember this one time I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, I've lost weight. And he just scoffed at me and he was like, where between your ears? That was like a daily occurrence for me. And what that resulted in was in my late teens, early 20s, as I got heavily into partying. So I tried to fill the void of not feeling like I was enough through drugs. And I think that actually is a path many people who had similar upbringings to me probably worse, did. And the drugs just got harder and harder and harder, and I ended up trying meth. I remember the very first time I tried it. I remember exactly where I was. I remember the exact feeling. And that then took me all the way to on the street. And coincidentally, the thing that got me off the street was I used to have a Nokia phone. I was living on the street in New Zealand. I wouldn't have any credit to call out. But back then, this is a long time ago, you could call the phone, but I couldn't make phone calls out. I would just play Snake. And my mum called me and she's like, your dad's sick. You have to come home. And I was like, well, I can't come home. I don't have any money. Like, I've got a drug problem. And my mum's like, bless her. She's like, oh, are you addicted to marijuana? And I was like, no, much but she didn't have any money either. So she borrowed money off her boss, bless her boss, and she got me a flight home. And then my dad was in palliative care and he went in and out for the next 3 years. And over that journey, I discovered he actually wasn't my father. So my mum had an affair and I was a result of an affair. And so that kind of brought me to a position where I could understand his disdain for me. Although the 8-year-old child that was still within me needed a lot of healing after that. But I made peace with him. I visited him every day. I went back to university. I started to get my life together. And what really changed everything for me was when I held his hand when he died. I think when you're faced, as you well know, with death, it really reminds us that we too will go out that way at some point, and we either live now or one day it will be too late. And so I chose to live now in that moment, and that's when my journey of self-discovery, healing, and entrepreneurship began, like in that exact moment.
Wow. What a story. You shared some of this on stage, Kate, but not all of it. So thank you for that. And it's so interesting, everybody that I bring on here has a moment that they can pinpoint where they made a choice to go in one direction or another. Yeah. Right? And there's something profound in what you just said around just knowing that we're all going to go out this way. And you now at that moment had a choice to think, how do I want to go out? And it's not like this.
Mm-mm. No way. Like I detoxed myself off meth, which was very difficult.
I just can't even imagine.
It was really hard. And I was living in my home I grew up in. My dad was in palliative care. I really worked through all of this stuff that I needed to work through. The detoxification symptoms were not fun. However, in the moment that my dad passed away, I never ever wanted another drug in my life, because that was enough to heal me. I know that sounds really random, but I was just like, no way. Like I'm worth more than this, and I am going to follow my dreams. My father was an amazing artist, yet he subscribed. He was still my father. He provided for me, even though he wasn't my real dad. He still looked after me to the best of his ability. Even though he was mean, he still did the best he could in the situation. He wanted to be an artist. He was an amazing artist. And he never did that. He worked in a factory for 25 years. He worked every day and so much that when he passed away, he actually had so much sick pay incurred, or however you call it, I think it's incurred, that he took all that time, almost 5 years, he ended up going in and out of palliative care, because my mum and dad didn't tell me until 2 years in that he had cancer. So I only knew for 3 years. But yeah, so he gave up on his dreams. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let his life be the reason that I start living my life.
So I love that you're talking about this. I had a gentleman that I interviewed. Maybe you know him, Kate. He's pretty well known in the helping people heal addictions. His name is Dr. Rob Kelly. He's known as the addiction doctor.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with him. They found me, actually. They found my podcast and asked if he could be on, which I was blown away. But he shared a lot that you just touched on about how mental addiction is, how much it is really the mind and not the physical. And that once you can mentally make the decision, right, then you can actually do the work. And not very many people are talking about that with addiction, about how much of it is a mental thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Like it was definitely a conscious choice. I consciously chose. And like, of course, in the beginning, it was not easy because I was blessed in a way that a lot of my ecosystem was in another country because I somehow ended up in New Zealand. Like I don't know how I did that. I have no idea how I ended up in another country. A lot of that time is a blur. People even would come up to me and they're like, "Oh, hey, Kate, how you going?" And I'm like, "I have no idea who you are." Like I feel like there's a lot of memory brain cell damage that occurs. So at least I can laugh at it. But now I forgot what I was talking about. There definitely was a conscious choice, and I wasn't in the same ecosystem. So I think recently, I was listening to Alex Hormozi, and he was talking about how one of the fastest ways to change our behavior is to just shift microenvironments. So coincidentally, I believe in God. I think he was looking out for me, and he shifted me back to a microenvironment where it was easier for me to overcome that addiction after I made the mental choice.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that is another important point that you're bringing up too, is that you've made a choice to put yourself in a different place. And I have to say, common denominator amongst all of these people that I've been interviewing, Kate, including you, all point to God at a certain point. Like they literally can say, I don't know how this happened, but there was a moment where all of a sudden this was just outside of my control, including Dr. Rob Kelly. He talks about how he had an angel show up in his life, also homeless, had lost everything. This angel showed up and for many months mentored him, helped him get clean and all these things. And that angel disappeared overnight. Like he went to visit him one day at his apartment and he was gone. And he asked all the neighbors, "Where's John?" And they said, nobody's lived in that apartment for years. Stories like that, right? Where all of a sudden, in the moment they're making a decision, there's something, a bigger, higher power that shows up to help you get through that. So
I've got goosebumps.
I know. It's a cool story. So thank you for sharing that. So you go through all that. So what steps did you take, Kate, to move in the direction of your vision and your dreams then?
Well, first was definitely, I remember in high school, I wrote in my homework diary, Henry Ford's quote, "If you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right." So I knew a lot of it came down to my belief systems. I didn't really know, I had no idea what I was doing at all in the beginning, but I remember starting to listen to some of Tony Robbins's cassette tapes. I think it was the giant one, Awaken the Giant Within. It was a long time ago. And then I remember listening to a little bit of Les Brown. Then, so first, consuming content or consuming wisdom from people that were allowing me to take responsibility for my own belief systems. So I wasn't looking outside of myself. To be honest, I did try counseling for a little while and I didn't find it helped me a lot. They kept getting me to come up with the solutions, but I didn't have the tools to come up with the solutions. So listening to people like Tony and Les helped me start to ask the questions. As Tony says, the quality of your life is measured by the quality of your questions. Ask the questions of myself on how I could move forward, what I wanted, who was I, how could I begin to heal, what was my belief, what was a belief that was given to me by my circumstances growing up, and what did I choose to believe in that moment. So that was a good couple of years. I also went to university and studied philosophy. And people don't have to do that as a step, but if you can do something that helps you ask better questions, consume content that is self-empowering and forces self-ownership, and then be in an environment where you start to question. So philosophy is by definition science before it's proven. So I was in an environment where we were questioning everything. And that led me to question my decisions. It led me to question my thinking patterns, my feelings. And through that questioning, I was able to choose different outcomes and break patterns I wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Interesting. So, and again, another common denominator of everybody I've interviewed is that when they made the conscious decision, they went to work at number one, getting a real vision of what they wanted their life to look like, Kate, which is a big part of the work that I do, is I help people get that vision written. And then going to work at understanding that they needed to educate themselves and improve their mind, right? Not just get the degree or their certificate. It was all about the inner work.
Yes.
And then seeking out, doing a lot of this personal growth. It's interesting to me how people think, I don't know that I would have ever thought, I should probably ask myself this question. I should ask myself this question. When did I and why did I start seeking personal growth? and know that that was important. And I guess it was because, again, the people that I surrounded myself with when I started my first business over 30 years ago, it was all about personal growth. They were all reading books and listening to cassettes, which I love that you're talking about that, because I had all those cassettes too.
Yes.
And seeking out those people that can just pour into you like that. It's so huge.
It's massive. I remember having journal. Actually, my desk is still full of journals, just writing down my thoughts, writing down what I wanted. And for a long time, I was not clear on actually what I wanted because I didn't know who I was. So I had to go through this unfolding of like, I remember so clearly realizing that a lot of what I believed about myself was not true. It was something that was given to me by my environment that I grew up in. Like, that was a good 3 years of me just deconstructing that, going, well, who am I? What do I want to believe about myself? Like simple things like everybody would be like, oh, you're my sister Jenna, who I love. She's great. It was like, Jenna's the athlete. Jenna's built for speed. Kate's built for comfort. She has to work really hard to be good at sports because sports was important in my family. And I'm like, hang on a minute. That's just their opinion. How come I'm not good at sports? And later on, I got good at sports. I ran an ultra marathon. I danced professionally all over the world. There are a lot of things I did. I worked with a strength and conditioning coach from the Australian Institute of Sport, but I had to choose that. I had to separate what was mine and what was projected onto me by others. And when I did that, then I could start to build a vision for myself, but I couldn't do that because I had no idea who I was.
So good. Yes. So we talk a lot about the stories that we tell ourselves and what we learned and what we heard. And so much of that are just what people tell you. You know, for a long time, I used to say, Kate, I'm not good at math. I'm horrible at math. I've never been good at math. I can't do math. But then I learned when I became an entrepreneur and a business owner, I am really good at math, especially when it's attached to dollars.
Yeah.
So then you go to work and go, okay, so where did that story come from? And it's not true. And I also was told growing up, I was super cute, but not altogether that smart. And it took me a long time to say, you know, when people would tell me later in life, you are so wise, you are so smart. And I would be like, no, I'm not. And now I'm like, you know what? Yes, I am. Thank you very much. So we have to deconstruct. I love how you're talking about identifying all those, you know, false beliefs, deconstruct who you thought you were so you can find out who you really are.
Yes, 100%.
So
and
good.
You can almost,
so what did you find out? What direct?
Yeah. Okay. So
Sorry,
what
go
did I
ahead.
find out about? No, that's okay. It's a little, I'm sorry. What did I find out? Well, to be honest, I feel like it's an ever evolving journey of discovery. And I know a lot of people have massive issues with this personality test, which is the Myers-Briggs. But learning Myers-Briggs and then the espionage's approach of Myers-Briggs, the espionage world, MI6 and CIA, they have a slightly different approach on the Myers-Briggs personality types that they use in their profiling potential assets to get them to sell secrets to the American government. So one of my mentors is actually ex-CIA. Well, I don't know if he's ex. He's probably still in it. It's everyone says you never ex-CIA. But that
he just can't tell you.
That's right. He comes in. He's probably trying to recruit me. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But working with him and learning like deep human like social dynamics and behaviors helped me understand that. So I'm an ENTJ. I don't know if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs. It doesn't really matter.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm an ENTJ and I'm an ENTJ woman, which is really unusual. And so all of the traits that are very common for me to possess as an ENTJ, and I don't believe we're rigid in one, I'm sure we probably flex between many, but all the things I made myself feel guilty about having because the other women around me didn't have them are actually just really normal for my personality type. And so learning that allowed me to accept myself. And when I could accept myself, I was able to double down on my strengths and look at how I could leverage those in my life. But until I accepted that that's okay, that's normal for me, I kept trying to fit myself into all these social normal boxes of how I should be as a woman.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're right about the personality test. I do believe that because I'm also a fan of the Enneagram. Which I'm sure you're familiar with. Yeah.
Yes.
We can put all these numbers and labels and letters and stuff, but I do think, and we evolve. At one point, I would tell you that I was a very extroverted person most of my life growing up. My husband and I were both very outgoing, very social. I'd be the last one to leave the party, right?
Yeah.
And now I run out of words by the end of the day, Kate. I'm like, I can't go. I can't talk to people anymore. I need to refuel. I think a lot of that has to do with the losses that I've been through the past 10 years. I just really went inward both times and needed a lot of quiet time. And so now energetically, I can be with people, but I have to like disappear for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and rightly so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough as well. So I get it.
I'm an extrovert or introvert, something like that.
An ambivert. I think it's called an ambivert. Is that what they call it?
Oh, is there a new word? I don't know. Okay, great.
Ambivert, apparently. Yeah. There you go.
So you started in a direction of becoming an entrepreneur. Where'd you start and how did you start?
I started by teaching dancing and getting paid to teach dancing. So I was a subcontractor under a studio. So I was I danced as a kid. Then I stopped because everybody told me I was too fat and I'd be a bad dancer. And then I went back as I was after I healed from my meth addiction, one of the first things I did other than go to university was go back to dancing. Turns out I was really good at dancing and I ended up traveling all across the world. And so the first thing I did was I taught dancing as a business within a dance studio. So it would require me to like go to local businesses and offer free dance lessons. Like that was the lead funnel back then. It's like, come in for a free 30-minute session. And then you'd sell them into like, a 3-month package or a wedding dance package. From there, I then went to study to be a personal trainer because I thought that would support my dancing. And then I opened health and fitness business. It's a kind of like an indoor boot camp. And I ended up scaling to 5 locations across the state that I was in. And that was my first real business. And that was a bricks and mortar business. I was one of the first people to do Facebook advertising for bricks and mortar fitness businesses in Australia.
Wow. And that's not easy. Brick and mortar is a big risk. It's challenging.
I learned a lot of big things.
I'll bet. Yeah. Because there's so many macro events that can affect the success of that, right?
Yes.
So good for you. So what happened after the fitness business?
After the fitness business, which I scaled too quickly, by the way, that was a lesson that I did learn, that 5 locations in 18 months was a really bad idea. So I learned that.
Yeah.
That was the first
That's funny.
lesson. And another thing I learned also during that time is that you have to put money away for tax. I was so young. Like I was just like, oh, I'm making all this money. It's amazing. Scale. Anyway, I learned those lessons the hard way. Then from there, I started getting into coaching. So my business was called Body Transformers Holistic Health and Fitness. And we worked a lot with the mind and mindfulness and mindset, as well as health, physical fitness. And so people started coming to me wanting coaching outside of the physical and just wanting the mental, like they wanted meditation. They wanted mindfulness practices and all sorts of things. So I started doing that. And then the result of scaling too quickly, I decided to shut down the businesses and I just went into coaching. And then I went from mindset coaching to spiritual development coaching to running a retreat business and then into business coaching. And here I am today.
That is amazing. And I'm so glad that you are sharing the challenges, Kate, because I am very focused. And I think I mentioned this to you that I really want to start working with young adults and I'm getting ready to launch a community for them because I'm so aware of their world. And they tell me a lot. And one of the things that they tell me is that they are so afraid to move in any direction towards the thing that they really are desiring or that they're dreaming for 2 fears. One, that they feel like if they go in that direction, they're going to get stuck in it for life and that they can't pivot or change if they want to. And 2, the bigger thing is that they are huge fear of failing, especially financially. Yeah. And I got to speak to a bunch of high school kids last April. And they told me that they were really worried about those 2 things mostly. And I told them, guys, I'm 61 years old and I'm still learning and moving and changing and growing, and making new choices. It never stops. Exactly. So I'm so glad that you shared that you did these things and it didn't work out. So you went on to the next thing because I think they need to hear that.
Totally. I mean, I look at it like every single experience gives me what I call energetic weight. So I like as an entrepreneur, I have weight because of my failures, because of the times I've messed up. If I hadn't have gone all in and learnt those lessons and recovered and kept going, I wouldn't have the weight and the experience that I have now. So we can't actually fail. Like failure is the cornerstone of success.
Right.
Like we have to, what is it? Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, I think the book is. It's such a
Yes,
great
it's what
book.
I quote it all the time.
Yes, we must fail forward. And it is scary. Of course, it's scary. As an entrepreneur, one thing I've learned is if you know the art of lead generation, you can never actually really fail because you can always get more leads. And that's the lifeblood of being able to bring in revenue. So if anyone's thinking of being an entrepreneur and they're young, my advice is first learn how to generate leads and then go from there. Because if you have that skill, it's your get out of jail free card.
So good. Yeah, so I've coached a lot of businesses, mostly people in the service industry around coaching and speaking, and they all want to do the things that look the sexiest and the easiest to do first, which is I want to set up a website and I want to get on social media and I want to do all these things, but I tell them that what you need first are people because none of those things are going to matter if you can't go out and talk to people and bring people in. I built both of my businesses, Kate, to 6 figures before there was any social media, any websites, any of that stuff. And it's because I was just a really good networker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part that people don't want to do is they don't want to get out and be the face of their brand.
100% agree, 100%, because it is hard to show up. Consistency is very difficult. And I'd say consistency is the other cornerstone of like success as an entrepreneur, and consistency regardless of how you feel. Like I was on a mastermind today and somebody asked me, they're like, oh, do you think that your energetic state impacts your marketing results? And I'm like, not really. I said, because if you're making your decisions based on like a data-driven process, because marketing is the art of collecting data and the art of testing, then how you feel, providing you're executing accurately the process every time, it shouldn't really affect your results. If your feelings are affecting your results, it's because you're not showing up consistently in some way and executing the same process and dialing it in every time. It's not that the process is the problem, it's that you're not consistent. That it's not a lack of information, it's a lack of implementation, right? And when people don't feel good, they don't want to implement, and then they don't get the results. They blame the process, but really it was the implementation.
So good. And I love how you're talking about not acting on the feelings. I heard a speaker talk on that years ago, and I've repeated her many times that one of the biggest characteristics of a really good leader is they learn how to manage their emotion and just fall in love with the redundancy of the business.
Yes.
Feel it, do it anyway. Feel it, do it anyway. And the only reason I've been able to do that, and I know is the same for you, is that my vision has always been bigger than whatever the feeling was I was having in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And numbers don't have feelings. Everyone's like, oh, my revenue. I'm like, your revenue doesn't have feelings. Like, just go out and do the thing you know you need to do. Like, move on. Like, doesn't matter. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy, is it? To manage feelings. I love a guy called Jocko Willinick. Do you know Jocko?
No, I don't.
He's an ex-Navy SEAL, and now he owns a company called Echelon Front, and they do leadership in the corporate world, and they teach the principles of wartime leadership that he learned as a commander in several tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, I believe. He teaches that into companies, and that all talk about minimizing and managing emotion and radical self-responsibility from the top down. It's really amazing. Like that's helped me immensely with managing emotions because my family are Irish. We have Irish heritage. We're known for being a little fiery, want to punch people sometimes. So his stuff has really helped me.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And I've had to learn a lot about that as well. But it is it's a hard thing, I think, especially for women to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But so important. So Kate,
Yes.
so much great advice that you have given here today. And I just really would love for you to maybe leave just one big tip that you would give somebody that's maybe a young adult like you, coming from hard times or maybe even overcoming some adversity or addiction of their own and just really getting back on track and getting to where you are now, where you're loving life and feeling successful. What would that be?
It would be find someone who has what you want to do and let them be your 1 minute mile. And what I mean by that is like before the 1 minute mile was broken, like people tried it and they tried it and they tried it. No one could break it. And then one person broke it and then a myriad of people broke it afterwards. So if somebody's got what you want and they've gone before you, that is permission and evidence that you can do it too. Model them, hold on to that, and remind yourself every single day, if they can, you absolutely can.
So good, Kate Gray. Thank you so very much. Again, I know how busy you are. I know that you did not know me at all, but you've come on here, and I just feel honored that I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I hope we can stay connected. And I appreciate you pouring into my audience today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who listened.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond today. And I'm here to just keep reminding you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.